Hi there, my name is Renee Hobbs, and today's date is February 23rd, and I'm here with the amazing students of COM 416 Propaganda at the Harrington School of Communication and Media in the spring 2017 semester, and students are starting to gather. So I see people signing in as we speak. I see Jeremy, I see Hong Yen, Mira is around, but oh, there she is. Mira is around.
I just got into New York from a drive, so I'm just getting my
good show. You be listening in the background. I see Zoe. I see Francesca. I see Stan Ross. I see Kaylin. So welcome to tonight's class. We have a big agenda. Our topic for this evening is beneficial propaganda, how propaganda can be used for social good. And of course, that's a big topic. We could spend a whole semester on that topic. But why don't we start with your experiences of watching the film by Werner Herzog, It Can Wait. What'd you like or dislike about this film? Who wants to go first?
I do.
Thanks.
Well, like in the video, I seen that, like, you know, with the first story, you know, you probably get mad at the driver who hit Xavier. You build up all this anger, but then it, like, say for the second video, the guy who I think he hit the Amish buggy or something like that. You start to feel bad for him, and like it made me think like, damn, if, you know, what if the driver that hit Xavier, what if she feels this bad, you know? So, like, you know, it just builds mixed emotion through the whole video.
Really great observation, Stan. When we move through this film, we're invited to identify with a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different people who have been influenced. What else did you notice about how this thing worked to make you feel a certain way? Yeah, I think, is that you, Kaylin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I liked is that the way they introduced all the different people, you didn't really know if they were a victim or someone who had caused an accident at first. Yeah. So I know one of my comments was about one of the later guys in the blue shirt who hit someone into another car that killed someone.
Yeah.
And at first I wasn't sure if he was a victim or not, and he was talking about how he was just a normal person, and it kind of emphasized how what happened to him could happen to anyone. It's not just like teen driving.
That's an absolutely brilliant example of the filmmaker's technique, how he keeps us in suspense, not knowing who are we hearing, a victim, a perpetrator, a family member, and we actually have this curiosity that starts to build up. And then when we find out, it's very tender, right? Because we realize that we could be in any of those positions, right? Very nice observation to be aware of how the piece was constructed. I'll take one more comment about this film and what you noticed about it. Mira.
Okay. Did I make my mute? I'm not muted. Okay. No, I sort of in the same vein. In the beginning, you weren't really sure if they were a victim or if they were the perpetrator. But you also, I didn't, it wasn't really clear if they were alive or not. In some cases, I thought, especially with Xavier in the beginning, I thought that she was, using very, very past tense, but and even some of the other ones too, but like Debbie was another, that was like one of the rough ones to watch, but it's just, I think, meant to probably illustrate like that their lives, that past tense is used because of who they were before the accident versus.
Oh, nice. Yeah, the ambiguity there that's created by the filmmaker is pretty darn powerful. let's just do a little show of thumbs. Thumbs up if before you saw this video you were a texter and driver. And what do you think the likelihood of your texting and driving now that you've seen this video is going to be? 5 fingers means you're still going to text and drive. 1 finger means no way in hell. And some other number is, you know, your likelihood in between. So how likely are you going to be to text and drive, do you think, on your finger zone? Yeah, so this film worked its magic. For me, the film caused me to get a really cool app to help me because I am so texting and driving because it's a very bad habit and I have it. So now my app tells me when I'm moving and tells me to turn off the phone. And that really is a good reminder, right? To have that little voice say, you know, if you're not a passenger, turn off your phone. So that's helping me a lot. Now, I wanted to provide you guys some feedback. I in general, was really pleased. In general, I was really pleased with the way that you handled the video annotation. But I do want to give you some feedback because as we move through the course, these class participation activities that we do, in the second half of the semester, it's not just really a matter of you do them or not do them. In the beginning, that's really what I'm looking at. Are you doing them? But starting next week, I'm going to be asking, well, how well are you doing them, right? And so I want to give some feedback on what I think distinguished a good response from like a less wonderful response. So to do that, I have to kind of go back to the very beginning of the thing and take a look at the target questions that I asked. I asked you to describe what different feelings do you experience as you move through the film, and what techniques are used to evoke emotion and create feelings of identification. You guys all did a super job at the first one. And that's not surprising because that film takes you on such an emotional roller coaster. There's plenty to say at each step of the journey. But some of you left it with that and you forgot to answer the second question. What techniques are used to evoke emotion and create feelings of identification? So this question asks you to look really closely at what the filmmaker was doing to create suspense, right? One thing that I noticed, and I put my comments, this afternoon I put my comments on the ant, so if you didn't get a chance to see my comments, you might look at them. One of the things that I noticed is how the Amish people are revealed to us filmically. The filmmaker hides them at first. He shows little bits of them, like little bits of them. And the filmmaker sort of obscures our seeing the Amish. And I feel this is an extremely artful and emotionally resonant approach. So in a way, this filmmaker has done a whole lot of things to create complicated feelings toward all the characters in the film, even the dead ones, right? Even the dead ones. Okay, so, all right, so let's see if I can get back to my share screen and see what we're gonna try to work on tonight. Such a fascinating topic, the idea that propaganda can be beneficial. I invite you to take a look at this piece of propaganda from the early 20th century Soviet propaganda. And I wonder who would like to take a stab at interpreting it. Underneath this picture, in Russian, it says, "From an early age, learn to take care of yourself." What is this propaganda trying to accomplish? Who's the target audience? What's the purpose? You don't really know, right? But I bet you can make some pretty good inferences or guesses. Who wants to go first? Matt.
Yeah, I definitely think I guess it's showing like him sewing on a button to his own shirt because like like it's encouraging him to like learn for himself and like go outside of like being reliant on his parents, kind of, because he's such a young boy. They're explaining that like they're not like, your parents aren't going to be around forever. You need to learn to take care of yourself.
Yeah. So that idea of being self-reliant is a positive piece of propaganda.
Yeah, and
Good.
I even think that like the fact that he's sewing, which is something his mother would have done, is even like more so saying like even the stuff your mom does for you, you still need to like learn how to do that too.
Nice point. Francesca.
Also, I know like in the 20th century, they had a difficult time like giving any sort of resources to their population. So a lot of it is like, make sure that you have the resources you need and you can get them for yourself, because we're not going to supply them.
Very nice. So you're using some contextual knowledge of the terrible economic state of the Soviet Union during this time period. This looks like it was produced sometime between the 30s and the 50s, right? When they were starving, right? So don't rely on the government, because the government's not going to be able to solve the problems of the bad economy and the other terrible hunger and poverty and economic deprivation. Good. One more interpretation of this message. What sense do you make of it? What guesses or inferences can you make? Mira, I see your hand is raised.
The boy, he looks like he's pretty sort of serene and in a sense at peace with having to have learned to take care of himself at an early age. So I think it can probably illustrate beyond just the tangible things like sewing and making sure you're providing for yourself so you sustain yourself physically, but I think it also has like a mental sustainability and emotional, like you have to learn to take care of more than just your body and your mind kind of thing, because he seems like he's like not thrilled, but like has sort of accepted what's going on kind of thing.
What a great observation. Mira, I think your point is why I'm not sure who the target audience is, because I don't think this is targeted to mothers. And I don't think this is targeted to fathers or kids. It's actually maybe speaking to a very broad audience, right? Right? Younger people and older people, right? Teenagers and young adults. Maybe this is speaking to a broader audience. Zoe, I see you have a point to make.
I don't know if anyone think of the point that it might be a metaphorical kind of meaning behind it, because I don't know if they have the meaning of our nation as a communist kind of nation is kind of young and is vulnerable in some sense, but us as a nation needs to kind of be strong at even like an early stage of communism, and to kind of take care of ourselves. So kind of a sort of nationalism sense to kind of encourage the majority of the people in the country as a nation.
What a great insight. So again, using contextual knowledge about the young history of the communist government in Russia and Soviet Union, a new government. Maybe this is metaphorical, and I think you made a very nice point that it's don't rely on the West, right? Don't rely on other European countries, because of course that would have been a really relevant point at that time. Okay, great. So in some ways, this positive propaganda illustrates this idea about how important it is to understand context. And that word context is something we're going to really dig into in the next couple of weeks. You can't really analyze propaganda without having a good understanding of the context in which it was created and the context in which it was consumed. Okay, so I want to show you guys an ad, and we're going to ask this question. The question is, could this ad ever be shown in the United States? Why or why not? This ad is from Thailand, And we're wondering, could an ad like this ever be shown in the United States? Why or why not? Okay, so we've learned, as you guys remember, we've learned that the best way for you to take a look at that is to click on that link, watch the ad on your own, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So give me a thumbs up if you know what you're watching and you're thinking, could this ad be produced and screened in the United States? Please mute your microphones before you begin to view. All right. How about you give me a thumbs up if you're finished watching that little film? Not quite yet. Almost people are still watching it. Most thumbs are up. Okay, thumbs up. Are we done watching that film? All right, so let's have a discussion. Is this the kind of film that, it's advertising, right? It's promoting a life insurance company. Would this kind of media advertising be something that would work in the United States? Why or why not? Love to hear somebody I haven't heard from yet, although I will call on you, Matt. Go for it. Matt, you go first, and then I'll hear from two people I haven't heard from yet.
All right. I was going to say that I definitely think that it could be effective in the United States, but I also think that like the media companies themselves would never let it air.
Now tell me more. Why do you say that?
I just think that there's higher paying people that are going to pay for those time slots, and the people who are going to try to support this ad specifically are not going to have the money to fund it.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. So you're saying a life insurance company probably doesn't have the profit to be able to afford to buy an American commercial.
Well, not necessarily that, but just also like the concept of the ad. I think like it's not quick enough. They're gonna like the media company themselves are gonna be like, okay, just make a quick ad instead of a 3-minute ad, and we'll air that instead. You know what I mean?
Okay, all right, that's an interesting argument. Let me hear somebody else. Would this ad work in America? It worked in Thailand. Would it work in America? Why or why not? Jeremy.
So I think that it would not work, but I think it wouldn't work just because of the fact that it targets people's lifestyle. And I think that America doesn't have a reputation for telling people how to live their life, if that makes sense. And I don't know, I don't think people would take to it, especially here.
Yeah. You think this ad might rub people the wrong way, right?
Right.
Yeah. Why? What about the message is kind of like definitely not something Americans would go for?
I guess just to me, the way like it tells people to live their life, I don't know, the like gathering behind the community thing. It's not a real, I don't know, a trend across U.S. I don't think.
Yeah. It says you should care about your community, your neighbor, and because they're going to give you warm, fuzzy feelings, and that's more important than status or power or consumer goods.
Right.
And that's not a message we hear very much. All right, Jeremy, I think that's a pretty good analysis. I'll hear one more. Mira's dying to talk, but Francesca is too. And can I hear from anybody I haven't heard from yet tonight? So would this ad play in the United States or not? Would this be an effective piece of positive propaganda in the United States? Some people might say yes. Other people might say no. What's your perspective?
We don't really have the attention span for a 3-minute. I'm just saying it's a good, I get why, I don't think I needed it to be as long as it did.
It's too long and it's too slow.
That's like,
that's what Matt says. Yeah. That's what Matt says. All right. So it is worth thinking about how cultural expectations shape our stance toward messages. It's possible if this was too slow or too long, that you started to reject the message early on, right? Early on, within the first 20 seconds even, right? And if you liked this message, it's probably because there was something about the character that you found really likable or lovable or charming or interesting. Of course, this piece does really speak to this idea of the power of emotions, right? So, okay, so I want us to think a little bit more about the context in which we experience emotions, but then I also want to now take a little bit of time. It's about that time. You guys had some really, really cool readings this week, right? Of course, we really got to dig into David Welsh in chapter 4 on germs. Some of you read that amazingly cool essay about visual propaganda. And some of you read the Jowett and O'Donnell article about the 10 steps for critically analyzing propaganda. So take a look at these 7 questions. I'm going to ask you to choose one to talk about with your team, 1 or 2. The first one, why is beneficial propaganda called soft propaganda? What are the origins of this form of propaganda? Who created it and for what purposes? So we're going back to the history of beneficial propaganda. Why did the Czechoslovak, that's supposed to say communist, that's a typo. Why did the Czechoslovak Communist Party design matchbox labels as a form of soft propaganda after the founding of the country in 1947? Who was Edward Bernays, and why is he called the father of modern propaganda? What was his breakthrough campaign in 1929? What's the origin of the March of Dimes campaign? What made it so effective? Question 5, how did counter-propaganda about children's MMR vaccinations, that stands for measles, mumps, and rubella, how did that counter-propaganda about children's vaccinations impact Britain? And maybe even you can talk about how it affected the United States. What are 10 steps needed to critically analyze propaganda? Which concepts are most important? And what specific characteristics of images make them so effective as a propaganda tool? Those are the 7 questions. Now, because you're going to only have about 7 minutes, I invite you to don't just do in your own ignorance if you don't know the answers to any of those. Oh, can I have somebody to put your microphone, mute your microphone now? Thank you. Thank you. So if you don't know the answer to some of those questions, you don't have to just stew in your own ignorance. You can actually go into the documents, right? Some of the answers are easily findable, right? There's one question from this one. There's 2 questions from this one. So we're going to break up into small groups. I'd like you to choose at least one question. Give me a thumbs up if you know what we're doing as we break into our small groups. I'm just checking the thumbs. You guys look like you know what we're doing. We're breaking out into small groups, and I'll see you in about 7 minutes, all right? And I'm going to ask each group to tell us something that tries to answer the question, all right? So let's go like that. Rooms are opening. Just click on the button to go to your breakout room. Okay, guess what? Francesca, we're back. And I don't know what happened to Stan. He might be here or he might not be here. So, and turn on your microphone because you are muted right now.
Sorry, my screen is all weird, but I can still hear you.
Oh, isn't that strange? I hate when that happens. Yeah, sometimes that's a bandwidth issue, you know?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
which of these questions can you start us off with?
Okay, so I'll do the 10 because that's the one I read, and that's I have the document up. So the 10 are the ideology and purpose of the propaganda campaign, the context.
I just want to see what the exact question was.
Oh.
Who was he and why is he called the father of modern propaganda?
Oh, hey guys, so would you do me a favor? When you're not talking, mute your microphone because we're getting a little bit of feedback from you right now.
A campaign on.
That is kind of weird. Okay, that sounds better. Yeah, so Francesca's starting us off by looking at question number 6. What are the 10 steps needed to critically analyzing propaganda? Okay, so go for it.
Okay, so the ideology and purpose of the propaganda campaign, the context in which the propaganda occurs, identification of the propagandist, the structure of the propaganda organization, the target audience, media utilization techniques, special techniques to maximize effect, audience reaction to various techniques, counter-propaganda, if present, and effects and evaluations.
Yeah. So for me, one of the most complicated and interesting one to figure out as a researcher is audience reaction.
Mm-hmm.
right? Audience reaction is a complicated thing. And I think the reason why Jowett and O'Donnell emphasize that so much is that they take pains to point out that not all propaganda is effective, right? Like a lot of it just, does not work. So that being able to pay attention to what makes a message, what characteristics of a message, and how does the audience react, that seems like a really important one. Of the list of 10, is there one that you think is more important, or one that's more interesting to you? Uh-oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry. They discussed how propagandists use the technique of like already pre-existing notions, like of resonating, how to resonate with people. Like they use pre-existing notions and like use people as puppets. Like that section was really interesting to me.
Yeah, this idea of emotional resonance and trying to connect, and it kind of, that section of the article reminded me a little bit of when we watched Look Who's Back, right? And Hitler says, I play the people like an instrument, right? So that idea of paying attention to the resonance of the messages, right, within the culture. Yeah, really cool. Really a fascinating and cool topic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Stan, do you want to pick a question that you can ask and answer? I saw you there a minute ago. Where are you, buddy? No? Okay, we missed out on him. Okay, so I'll do who is Eddie Bernays and why is he called the father of modern propaganda? Eddie Bernays, I actually met him when I was a young assistant professor at Babson College, and my colleague, the economist, the professor of economics, invited me to his house for dinner, and there was Eddie Bernays. And at the time, and this was like 1985, okay, before you were born, right? He was in his late 80s. I mean, he was old, and he didn't hear that well, but he was brilliant, okay? And Eddie Bernays basically happened to be the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he understood about human psychology and drives and needs, right? And he started a company to help businesses promote their products, but not like a marketer. In fact, he used kind of a very different technique. He created events that would shift the public's attitudes about products. And his his breakthrough campaign in 1929 was the Torches of Freedom campaign. The suffragettes had just won the vote, right? So women could vote for the first time. And on Easter Sunday in New York City, he had all of the society ladies dressed in their finest clothes. And he persuaded them to walk through the Easter parade smoking their torches of freedom, their cigarettes, right? And the company's name was never mentioned, right? It was just a symbol of connecting to women's independence and power, and linking women's independence and power with smoking. It was brilliant, and brilliant pro-tobacco public relations. And he changed the way we started thinking about marketing. He helped us understand public relations as a management function. And I think he's a genius. I think he's a genius, and he actually has ethics too, which we're going to learn about next week. So those are two of the questions. All right. So it looks like I'm gonna see if I can close these breakout rooms now. We've had a little bit of time. So
that's crazy.
Okay, looks like people are coming back indeed. Very, very nice. Okay, so you guys are coming back, right? There you are, you're coming back. All right, so I hope in this little informal conversation that you had a chance to actually share some learning. So let me hear from 3 people about something that you learned or shared in your short breakout group. Yeah, Keelan.
Well, Matt was telling me, we read different articles, and he was telling me about Edward Bernays and his campaign about the cigarettes.
Torches of freedom.
Exactly.
All right, good. Kaylin, great. Matt, thanks for sharing. Let me hear from 2 more people. When you had your breakout discussion, what'd you learn?
I'm on here.
Jarrell, your microphone's acting really weird. And maybe that's because there's 2 of you on the screen. So one of you has to go, there you go. So try again. So what'd you learn in your small group breakout? All right, I don't know. So here's the thing. The most important set of ideas for this week's course is to understand, why is beneficial propaganda called soft propaganda? Anybody want to take a stab at that? That's an easy question. Why is it called soft propaganda? Mira, turn your microphone on.
Yes.
Yeah. Why is it called soft propaganda, beneficial propaganda?
Well, that's not one of the fun facts I learned in my breakout session. We
Oh,
read. I didn't mean to seem like I was talking. I was actually trying to persuade a cat to not be mad at me. But I would, if I had to take a guess, I would say
go for it.
Soft propaganda in the same. It's gonna be weird. It's sort of like how how there's, because it's not as, doesn't have all the negative, as many of the negative connotations as straight, like persuasion is looked at differently. I think like the use of persuasion is probably what I would guess would be the biggest difference. What would distinguish something as soft propaganda?
Okay, very nice. And you're kind of letting yourself off the hook by saying soft propaganda is more like persuasion, right? Than propaganda.
I just think that it would be not so much that it's more like it, more that the persuasion tactics either are different in themselves or their deployment of them is different. Like there's more. It's not necessarily an extent to just have someone adopt issue, conform someone, like brainwash someone, more than it is to sort of educate, I guess would be my summation there. So I'm gonna wrap that up.
All right, good try. Dre, what's soft propaganda? What's your guess?
I feel like it's because like it's like easier to like persuade people to like believe it. For example, like pictures, like visuals, like it's easier to persuade somebody with visuals. And like it gives them like a like a positive like input on things just by seeing it. So I feel like it's more easier to like persuade them. It's called soft propaganda.
Okay, so just to clarify,
Yes, ma'am.
Soft propaganda uses the same techniques as the propaganda we've been talking about. Activates strong emotions. It creates, it simplifies complex ideas, right? It targets audience needs, and it even sometimes creates us, them thinking, or attacks opponents. So the trick about soft propaganda is it's understood as having a broad social benefit that is not affecting a few people, but actually having a broad benefit to a large number of people, right? So, but propaganda, soft propaganda uses the same techniques as the propaganda that we've been studying all along. And that's really fascinating, because then the question we have to ask when we're asked to evaluate propaganda and ask, is it beneficial or harmful? As I hope you had a chance to do on the Mind Over Media website this week, you always have to ask, well, beneficial or harmful to who? Who benefits? Who's harmed, right? And so soft propaganda often is used because the term is often used because it almost like it blankets a very large group, even the whole society. Mira and Matt.
Does it have a target audience then?
All propaganda has a target audience, even if it is a very wide one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like that Thai life insurance ad, right? Probably a target audience was a young man of working age, right? But it actually appealed to a wider audience, right? Including older women perhaps, and others, right? These two topics are pretty important. You learned a little bit about Eddie Bernays, but do go back into the reading and learn about the March of Dimes campaign. You may think of that as like Jerry Lewis, but the history of that is fascinating, and especially the techniques they pioneered, right? Asking people to give a little bit of money turns out to be a genius technique, and it works more effectively than other propaganda techniques. So that's pretty cool. All right, so here's our next activity, 7:43, we're right on schedule. Critically analyze 3 propaganda examples with the media literacy remote control. If we were in a real class, I would be handing you out copies of the media literacy remote control, but as is, I just have to show it to you. I created this in 1993 when I wanted to help my undergraduate students learn how to ask critical questions about what you watch, see, and read. The critical questions include these 5 questions. Who is the author and what is the purpose? What techniques are used to attract and hold your attention? What lifestyles, values, and points of view are represented? How many different people interpret this message? And what is omitted from the message? And on the other side of the card, it asks you to analyze a message by offering a reality check, really comparing how is this message similar or different from reality. The private gain or public good button, that's the little bag of money. Who's benefiting financially from this message? The question mark, what's left out? The values check diamond. How does this message match with your values or contradict your values? The read between the lines button, the stereotype alert button, the solutions too easy button, and the record save for later. Let's watch this short video I made way back in 1993 to see how it works.
Is a vital part of contemporary education. It involves creating messages using technology and questioning them. Think of media literacy as a remote control that you can use to analyze and evaluate messages. You can ask, what's accurate and believable? Who's making money from this message? What are the ethical values presented? What messages are implied and unstated? What's left out? What are they not telling me? And what's worth paying attention to? What's valuable? What do I like? With the Media Literacy Remote Control, you can check for stereotypes or examine when solutions presented are too easy. Critical thinking for the information age means creating messages yourself, asking questions, and helping people of all ages become effective communicators. That's media literacy.
Okay, so now I want you to keep these 5 questions in mind. Who's the author and what's the purpose? What techniques are used to attract and hold your attention? What lifestyles, values, and points of view are represented? How might different people interpret the message differently? And what is omitted? Okay, so we're going to break into 3 groups. Group 1 is going to watch just 1 minute of Enough to Eat, produced in 1936. Group 2 is going to watch Potato Pete, just 1 minute of this song from Great Britain in the 1930s. And group 3 is going to watch Beyonce in her special Let's Move music video. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you know what you're going to be doing. Group 1 is going to be watching the first video, group 2, the second video, group 3. You're only going to watch 1 minute of video, and then you're going to turn to those 5 critical questions. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do that. So mute your microphone, and I'm going to put you into a couple of breakout rooms. Same as before, breakout room 1 is Kaylin and Matt. Breakout room 2 is Dre and Mira. Breakout room 3 is Jeremy, Zoe, and Hong Yan. All right? So join the group.
What video should I watch?
You get to choose.
Okay. I'm going to choose Beyonce.
Oh, let's watch. I can't wait. Okay, I'm going to mute my microphone. We'll watch for 1 minute, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Definitely hard to stop watching that after 1 minute.
It's really hard.
It's so good.
Yeah.
All right, first question. Who's the author and what's the purpose?
This is difficult. Who's the author? I would guess somebody that is like cares about childhood obesity or something. I don't know. Like
Good.
I feel like it doesn't have something to do with Beyonce. Like it seems like it's going to be something that has to do with children. I don't know.
And so the purpose?
Well, it looks like it's her music video, but at the same time, it looks like it's something, it has to do with children and like getting up and moving.
Yeah. So getting kids to exercise is the purpose. Okay.
Yeah.
What techniques are used to attract and hold your attention?
Well, the dancing, Obviously, the children. They're using children.
They're so cute.
Yeah. The fact that Beyonce's in it. The camera pans different ways, like every 2 seconds.
Yeah. Those dance moves themselves.
Yeah.
Which are amazing. Okay, so what lifestyles, values, and points of view are represented here? What are the values of this thing?
One of them I think is diversity and like coming together, because they definitely have like a lot of kids of like there's a lot of people of color in it, as well as white kids
and kids of different ages. I noticed. So there was diversity in race, and there was a diversity in age, and diversity in size. There were some chubby kids and some skinny kids. Yeah. Good. Okay, so how many different people interpret this message differently?
So I think somebody my age would just find it entertaining, or like anybody that's a bit older than a child would just find this really entertaining and probably want to get up and do themselves. But children would see it differently because they're like, they see people like them in the video. Right. So yeah.
And because it's set in a lunchroom in what looks like a big school, you're right that people who work in schools are likely to have a different reaction, right, than just somebody who hasn't been in a school in a long time. So teachers and kids, students might respond differently to this.
Yeah.
Now, what about Beyonce lovers? Are they likely to have a distinct response to this, or are they gonna not like this because she's involved in propaganda?
I think they'll love it because it's her doing something with like a positive. It's soft propaganda. So I think, like, as somebody who loves Beyonce, this is awesome. So
okay, so you speak from experience. What about the last question? What is omitted?
What is omitted?
That's a hard question, but what's omitted? We only watched a minute, but you probably have some questions as you wish you might want to know more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious who's actually behind it. That's really, like, who was like, let's get Beyonce to dance with some children to, like, for this. That's really
great question. And you know what? It's not immediately obvious that it was produced by the White House. This is a Michelle Obama First Lady initiative. But now that makes perfect sense, right? Now that you know that, right? Yeah, exactly. So we've just practiced critically analyzing a piece of beneficial propaganda using the 5 critical questions of media literacy. We might talk about stereotype alert. We might talk about this message being solutions too easy, right? Because after all, the childhood obesity problem is not going to be solved by kids dancing in the cafeteria, right?
Yeah.
It's a more complicated problem than that. But still, it gives you an idea. All right, so I'd love to hear about your 1-minute analysis of Potato Pete. Which group? Who did that? Who did that one? Where are they? Up? No, neither of you. Kaylin and Matt, what'd you guys look at?
Enough to eat.
Oh yeah, this is a soft propaganda from the 1930s. What did you notice about the techniques that were used in this propaganda film?
At first, I thought it was kind of bizarre that these, like, they didn't really talk about, like, we said that we thought these children were, like, maybe foster children. They didn't really talk about, like, why they were there. And there was a lot of emphasis on, like, how they need to start having healthy lifestyles so young, and that these meals are so important. And then they brought in the mothers and they were teaching them how to, like, feed their kids. And Matt was kind of saying that it kind of makes it seem like the mothers at the time didn't really know what was best for their children. Like, you don't know what to feed your kids. That's, like, the healthiest option for them. Yeah. And then we kind of talked about how they didn't really include all the details. Like they were like, oh yeah, your kids should come to these centers to get what they need, but they didn't really say what it is that the kids need, what they really are eating, or like where they were.
It's really true. The propaganda film probably wasn't even targeting those poor mothers, right? It was probably targeting a much broader audience. That isn't it great our government is so, good to help people, but it does remind us about how we take for granted that people know about nutrition today, right? We assume that that's well understood, but in the 1930s, as we can see, those concepts were not very well understood. And so I'm really glad that you got a chance to take a look at essentially how the mothers were depicted in that short film. Okay, so how about the Potato Pete film? What techniques were used to attract and hold your attention for Potato Pete?
It's stuck in my head now.
Uh-oh. Oh, yeah. So it was a catchy tune.
Very, very catchy.
Who's the target audience and what's the purpose? Who created this message and why?
Post World War II surplus of, well, actually, I guess during World War II, we did a little inside. We were both doing some side stuff. Found out there was also a certain Dr. Carrot involved, I guess. But so it was, I guess, in an effort to avoid another shortage. It was like, done in like, it was just like they created the surplus of potatoes, and then like, what are you gonna do with all these potatoes? Okay, well, you can do literally everything with them. And
yeah. And I kind of got interested when I saw the recipe book for potatoes that was in here, the Potato Pete recipe book. And I was like, I wonder if they did a music video. And they did. They did a recipe book and they did a music video in like 1940.
Really?
So that was fascinating to me. So clearly beneficial propaganda goes way, way back. Okay. Now, I'm getting to the end of my time, but I want to make sure that that I help you understand what you're going to do for next week. Oh, I guess we'll wait. Do me a favor, you guys. Watch this. I'll move it down to please complete these activities. Watch that piece of propaganda for next week. And do remember that your Leap 2s are due next week. And Leap 2 is not the kind of project you can start at 3 p.m. on Thursday and get it done by 7. It's just not. It's not that kind of project. So you should be working on it. And if we had time, I'd ask you for a progress report, but I'm pretty sure you know that this is 150 points. It's worth 15% of your course grade. I have high hopes that these are going to be gorgeous. Okay, here's what I'd like you to do for next week. I'm going to ask you to read and tweet. We're reading either one of these two pieces, either chapter 2, One People, One Nation, One Leader in this book, or Propaganda for Patriotism and Nationalism, which is also very similar in its energy. After you read David Walsh on propaganda and patriotism, by choosing one of the chapters below, compose a minimum of 3 tweets to concisely summarize key ideas and information that you learned. At least one tweet should make a connection between what you learned and the present day. And next week, I'm grading the tweets for quality. So there are a bunch of criteria for a well-formed tweet. First of all, it should have the hashtag COM416. Second of all, it should be able to make sense but to people who might be beyond our class. And a well-formed tweet also includes a hyperlink, a URL to a source that advance the reader's knowledge. Okay, so 3 tweets. Cool project. We're going to engage in a crowdsourced reading of Eddie Bernays' classic book, Propaganda. Here's how to complete the assignment. The whole book is online, free, and we're going to do this fun activity called crowdsourcing. Eddie Bernays, the father of public relations, wrote this influential book called Propaganda. In the pages that follow, we'll engage in a collaborative reading of the short online book by summarizing, paraphrasing, and using direct quotation. So here's how it works. You read one chapter of the book, and provide an accurate summary of key ideas using a combination of paraphrasing and direct quotation. Then you comment on the idea using the commenting function. So here is an example. Review the summaries and comments written by those who came before you, because everybody will be doing this at their own time whenever they get around to doing it during the week. So when you show up on this page, read through what other people have left before you select a portion of the book to summarize and comment on. Our goal is to try to have summaries of the entire book. And that means that because there's 25 people in the class, there will be multiple summaries of the same chapter. That's okay, but be sure to offer a summary that represents your own original work. So you can read the online book by clicking here, and then I gave an example of how I'd like you to do it. Here's a summary of chapter 1. I've used summarizing, paraphrasing, and direct quotation. And then I highlighted an interesting idea, and over here in the margins right here, I add my comment. So I'm clearly separating my summary of the work from my reaction to the work, right? That's the mark of a disciplined, college-educated person. And I think this summary represents a very good substitute for the chapter, right? If instead of reading chapter 1, you could read my paragraph, because it's a very good summary of the chapter, right? So you're going to do the same thing. Maybe you'll pick propaganda for education, propaganda and political leadership, women's activities in propaganda. This book is fascinating. It is the Bible for propaganda, and it's really the beginning of the field of public relations. All right, let me see what questions you guys have about that. Any questions about that? Okay, then the last thing I want you to do is just watch a short video. This is a student-produced video called Schools of Thought, Nationalistic Propaganda in History Textbooks. And I want you, it's about 7 minutes long. As you view it, identify a key idea by making 2 annotations, right? So it looks a little bit like the annotations we did last time. First, I'd like you in the first annotation to summarize a key idea in your own words. And in the second annotation, comment by considering how the idea presented in the video is connected to both the past and the present. Next week, your Leap 2 is due. And so this is really a pretty modest amount of work, because our topic is so relevant to where we are right now: propaganda, nationalism, and patriotism. We should have an amazing discussion next week, and I'll be really looking forward to your Leap 2s. Now, if you guys have any questions about your Leap 2 process as you move through it, what's the best way to reach me?
Twitter.
Okay, so we sign off as we always do with the hands in the air. This time, we're doing the blinking yellow light. Alrighty, so we're signing off going, bye now. Bye now. See you next time.
See you next time.
Come on, Francesca. You got to play with us.
Oh,
yeah, girl. Yeah. All right. See you next time, guys. Bye-bye.